Just asked a question many years ago. I was being interviewed by the Financial Times in the era when I was telling people that we decided not to participate in the energy recession. And we were the fastest growing energy company in the world, but we were the only growing energy company in the world. That's why we're the fastest. And I was also asked, flying back from Houston to Amsterdam and London back and forth, and they said, well, doesn't jet lag affect you? And I said that jet lag was for cunts. And it always seemed when I answered one of those questions, was asked one of those questions by a female journalist. It was never male journalism. Male journalists weren't as inquisitive. I don't know what the reason is. And as I told you, and this are the press clippings from some of the things that I've described from the newspapers, the various newspapers that we were written up in, and many of them were just written up about me. Before we get into the more or less the beef of your quantum leap action plan, which is growth, working capital, financing, internal and acquisitions for external growth, I discussed last night that from the Harvard Business Review, the article that was about how managers, mediocre, or not mediocre, but average managers really hurt you more than average employees, and which is more or less consistent with what I have said, and the fact that the Harvard Business Review is now agreeing with me probably means that my theses, of what makes management good and what makes management bad is probably wrong now that Harvard's teaching it. And then I gave you, or I mentioned that there was a kid called Chris Josopowitz, who was a young Oxford kid when he came here at 23, and then went off to America and made a lot of money. And I couldn't remember what his real name was, but he changed his name to Christian Bailey. And we really had some characters come through the program. And for the most part, they distinguished themselves when they went off into the real world, some of which did exactly what I suggested, recommended, and the seminars changed over. The Castle Seminar, which I believe the first seminar was in spring, summer of '94, and the first QLA seminar that was built, created in May of '93 in Los Angeles. But we've had some real successes, some real big successes. And when we stopped keeping track, when I listened to the '97 tape of Harvard from yesterday, that I gave in 1997 Harvard Club in New York, as compared to the 1993 Harvard Club, I said at that time, and I really haven't kept track since, that the seminar attendees had created over $100 million in net worth for themselves. Now, since then, some of the guys and gals have created $100 million plus by themselves from one individual. And some people don't like to share their successes because they're afraid of taxes or a lot of other things. One of the stories I thought of, I just ever had lunch, there was a was a PhD scientist kind of guy, and his girlfriend was also a PhD. He was an engineer, and she worked for the IRS. And they were members of the CEO Club. One was, I think they were both in the Washington, D.C. branch. And they attended the Harvard Club speech in '93, and they came to the seminar, I believe, in '94. So they had already completed their QLA training before the '97 Harvard Club. But she came up with a motto from Doris is the only one old enough to remember this. "I'm from the IRS, and I'm here to help," was a jingle that they sold when they were trying to recreate the Internal Revenue Service in America. "I'm from the IRS, and I'm here to help." That was her claim to fame. Now, whether she got it from experiences that she had here, I don't know. Her boyfriend, husband, became her husband, was a PhD in electronics, and the idea is that he came away from here. They sold their business, and their goal was, he had an electronics business, was to sell the business for $10 million after taxes and to sail around the world. So between 93 when they heard, and 94 when they attended, and 97 when they reattended, they were able to do that. They sold the business off for $10 million after taxes, and they sailed around the world. And so we've got a lot of people that stopped relatively small amounts of money, because the point I'm trying to make is Attila and Benoit and Marcus and whoever, they say, I want to make $1 billion, I want to have a $1 billion company like the 300 Spartans, like the gypsies are saying. But once you get $10, $15 million in the bank, since you never had $10 or $15 million or $20 million in the bank, it changes your perspective completely. Excuse me. And all of a sudden, you working 10, 12, 14 hours a day, you don't see the rationale for it anymore. Well, if I did this in just 2, 3 years or 4 years, and I can pretty much buy, and a lot of you will think, well, I don't have to pay taxes, I'll run off, and I'll leave, and I'll go to South America. We've got a couple of mentees in South America. Some of you know them, in Colombia. One of which is a gypsy. And you decide that that's enough. And so, when I first started in the early 90s, I used to get upset with the people that said, I want to, $1 billion, and they make $20 billion, and they disappear. But now I realize, based on all the things that we've talked about, that that's all the influx that their emotional bank account needed to feel good about themselves. 10, 20, $30 million, whatever the number is. Some people, it's even less. I have some European guys. I've got a guy in the Netherlands that put 7 or 8 or 9 million guilders in his pocket, and I don't even know how much a guilder is anymore. And he forgot about it. He bought a boat and he sailed around. A lot of people buy boats and sail around. I think they buy boats and sail around because then it's tough to find them. They're not part of, in their minds, any taxing authority. And so that's okay. The point is that they're better off than they were to begin with. I don't know what the threshold for paying is in Gypsyville. I'm told by a gypsy that's not here, I'll come back to the seminar when I make $10 million. Somebody, I dreamt that, or somebody told me that, or and I don't know if $10 million is the right number, or that's $10 million you didn't pay taxes on, or that's $10 million you stole. I'm not sure what the rest of the sentence is, but if you've never had $10 million, or 10 million pounds, or 10 million euros, it will change your life. It will change your life, especially if you come from some place where they don't have a gas house and all they got is a whorehouse and a sawmill. I would imagine, let's call it euros, 10 million euros is a lot of money in that neck of the woods. I'm just guessing, not positive, but I'm just guessing that's a lot of money. And when they had a guest house, how much could you buy a dinner, a schnitzel, pommes frites, and a couple of beers? How much did it cost?
20 euro.
20 euro? Yeah. Okay. When I was living in Germany, decades ago, you could have a schnitzel that was literally almost this long, this big. It fell over the plate. Okay? Pommes frites that you couldn't see the schnitzel. Everybody knows schnitzel is schnitzel. And a couple, 3 steins of beer that big for between 3 marks, 80 pfennigs, and 5.5 marks. That's what it costs. Which is $1, $1.50, $2 maybe. And I used to have that, and I'd have a lot more than 2 steins of beer. And when I lived in the town, I used to stagger home. My house was about from here to the far gate. And when I was a young Army officer, and I'd have trouble getting up the stairs. Remember, I rented the top floor of the house. So everybody has a different comfort level, what they need. And so I'm not presumptuous enough to tell you that what it is, but what I am presumptuous enough to tell you that if 10 million or 20 million is that number and you feel comfortable and you live on it for 3 or 5 or 10 years, it will not be enough. Because inflation and all the other things will eat away at it, and if you don't do anything, because a lot of people just go to sleep then. You know, I will recommend that you go to Romania if you're going to go to sleep, but a lot of people just go to sleep, and so then they burn through the money, and then they get out of the habit. Remember we talked about habits? They get out of the habit of producing. They get out of the habit of driving themselves. They get out of the habit of being laser beam focused. They get out of all these habits. What I am here to tell you is, as opposed to what you've been told, well, then they come out of retirement and it's easier for them. It's not easier for them. It's many multiples times harder for them to get back in the throw of things. For those of you that have been out of school a long time like I have, if you went back to compete in universities with the kids, forgetting the kids are supposed to be smart and I can forget all that, to go to the regimen of having to read 200-300 pages a night, take notes, take exams, etc., etc., you know, not a lot of us could do it. Not a lot of us could do it. So you take that and you multiply it times 100, and that's how hard it is to get back in the rhyme, or the rhythm, I should say, of trying to make money. Plus, the economic world has passed you by now. Whatever you thought you knew, in 2015, let's say, it's not 2020, you're not germane anymore. You don't know anything that's germane. And if you're in the internet scum business, I mean, I don't know what will happen. What can happen in 7 years. You can just think back to 7 years ago. But when you're in virtually any business, I mean, there's going to be new technology, there's going to be new competitions, and, you know, the EU will have collapsed or not collapsed. The world economy will be a different place. You know, in my particular case, I gave the example, Colombia invaded Peru. Shit, Russia may invade fucking Poland again. I don't know. You don't know. So that's why, even though I've been, in theory, semi-retired since 1984, I've never been fully retired, because intuitively I knew that if I ever got out of the game completely, it would be difficult for me to get back in the game. Now, are there any questions on anything we've covered so far? Okay, thanks.